are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for
keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Thursday, October 17th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the Super Chat button in the chat. This will help create a Super Chat of any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. I will acknowledge it, and it just makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. That is gsmcpodcast.net. So, let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So, we're going to start off the show. We're going to preview tonight's game between the Denver Broncos and the New Orleans Saints. A pair of rookie quarterbacks going at it tonight between Bo Nix and Spencer Rattler. So, yeah, we'll get into all the specifics of that. Then, in the second part of the show, I'll get into some different headlines around the NFL. We'll talk about Nick Chubb, set to make his debut, it's looking like, on Sunday when the Browns take on the Bengals. We'll talk about Andrew Thomas, the left tackle for the Giants, being ruled out for the rest of the season. He's going to be getting foot surgery. We'll talk about Jerry Jones and his appearance on his weekly spot on local radio in Dallas. And we'll talk about what he had to say. And then we'll also talk about Tom Brady. The ownership bid for the Raiders, it's going to be passed, so we'll talk about that. And the limitations that he's going to have with him being a broadcaster. So, that's the second part of the show. And then, more recaps from this past week in Week 6. We'll get into talking about Caleb Williams and his performance on Sunday. Didn't get to that yet. We'll get into the Falcons and their win over the Panthers, and then we'll talk about last Thursday's game. I wanted to get into that, talk about the 49ers and their win over the Seahawks, and just kind of get into, talking about their performance and are they back. So we'll get into that and kind of take a little sneak preview to Sunday when we have the Super Bowl rematch when they take on the Kansas City Chiefs. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about tonight's game between the Broncos and the Saints. So Broncos are coming in. They dropped their previous game to the Chargers. Wasn't a great performance for them. They're 3-3 on the season. The Saints, after starting off 2-0 and, kind of opening our eyes a little bit with their performance, specifically against the Cowboys early on in the season, they've dropped 4 in a row. And things aren't looking good right now for the Saints. Derek Carr suffered an oblique injury against the Chiefs. So Spencer Rattler came in against the Buccaneers. Started the game against the Buccaneers and didn't look that bad. I know the score got out of hand. I mean, that was a crazy game with the Buccaneers, but didn't look that bad. The problem with the Saints right now is injuries, because you're missing your top 2 wide receivers in this game. There's going to be no Chris Olave. He's ruled out, still dealing with the concussion. And it was going to be tough to be able to play in this game just because of the quick turnaround and having to be in concussion protocol. And also Rashid Shaheed, their number 2 wide receiver, and also their kick return specialist. He's going to be out. Could be placed on IR, I believe, with that. Yeah, so he's going to be getting, looks like meniscus surgery on his knee. So you're going to be down your top two wide receivers in this game. And, Shaheed was having a good year. That deep ball guy. But yeah, losing him and Olave, it's going to be tough tonight. And especially when you have a rookie quarterback. It's not like Bo Nix on the other side has a ton of weapons to work with. But still, Bo Nix is, further along in the process as a rookie. Spencer Rattler is going to be making his second career start. He wasn't really expected to start this year, unless Derek Carr got hurt or if Derek Carr was inefficient. And Derek Carr got off to a good start. So, but yeah, you got two good defenses going at it tonight. And we've kind of been spoiled the last couple of weeks because we've been getting some good Thursday Night Football. More specifically, the Buccaneers-Falcons game from a couple weeks ago. The game last week, when we get into it later in the show, between the 49ers and the Seahawks, that wasn't a bad game. The Niners were dominating, and then the Seahawks started to come back, but then the Niners pulled away at the end. But that was, I still found entertainment in that game. This game might not be as exciting. But we'll see what happens. So to kind of look at the league rankings for these two teams, looking at the offenses first. So passing yards per game, Saints are 22nd, averaging 208.2 passing yards per game. The Broncos are 28th, averaging 180.3 passing yards per game. Rushing yards per game, Saints are 13th, which is something they're going to have to rely upon tonight with, both their top wide receivers being out. They're averaging 119.5 rushing yards per game. Broncos are averaging 107.3 rushing yards per game, which is 23rd. And then points per game, the Saints are 5th, which is kind of inflated because of the first couple of weeks. They're averaging 27.8 points per game. Broncos are 25th, averaging 18.7 points per game. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Broncos' defense is 5th against the pass, giving up an average of 190.7 passing yards per game. Saints' defense is 29th, giving up an average of 277.5 rushing yards per game. And then both teams, struggle against the run a little bit. Broncos are middle of the pack. They're 14th, giving up an average of 114.2 rushing yards per game. Saints' defense is 20th, giving up an average of 133.7 rushing yards per game. And then points allowed, Broncos' defense is 4th. Saints' defense is 23rd. Broncos' defense is giving up an average of 16 points per game. Saints' defense is giving up an average of 24.5. So, yeah, that's the stats there. And then looking at the injury report, like I said, Broncos, are coming in. They got some guys, some offensive linemen hurt, some guys on defense. Josh Reynolds, who was doing okay for them. He's on injury reserve. He's out till week 10. Actually, Patrick Surtain is out with the concussion. His expected return is next week. So that's a huge loss on defense for the Broncos. He's been great this year. And then as for the Saints, Noah Olave, excuse me, Noah Olave, no Shaheed. It looks like Taysom Hill's not going to play. He's doubtful, dealing with a rib injury. They got some offensive linemen banged up as well. So, yeah, so both teams are coming in banged up. For the Saints, like I said, I think they're going to rely on Alvin Kamara a lot in this game. They're going to have to. I think Spencer Rattler's going to have to manage the game as best he can. Limit turnovers against this good Broncos defense. Now, you're not going to be going up against Patrick Surtain, which is good. But still a very good Broncos defense. So the game plan, I think is to rely on Alvin Kamara And, like I said, Spencer Rattler's going to have to manage the game a little bit. And then for the Broncos, I mean, look, Bo Nix, he hasn't been bad this year. I know last week wasn't great for the Broncos against the Chargers, who have a good defense. But you know what? He's been okay so far this year. I mean, the pass defense for the Saints isn't great, so maybe they could take advantage of that. Cortland Sutton, scored touchdowns in 2 of the last 3 weeks. So, get him going in this game. But the thing I failed to mention is Sean Payton making his return to New Orleans for the first time, coaching against his former team. So, they're going to have something planned, I would imagine. With all the success that he had over in New Orleans, the Super Bowl championship against the Colts way back when, seems like forever ago. A lot of good years there with him as the head coach. I mean, there were some bad years and, there were some scandals, of course. But, him and Drew Brees, that was a good duo that, the Saints found a lot of success there. So, we'll see if they have anything planned tonight. I would imagine they do to honor him. But I actually do like the Broncos in this game. I don't feel great about it. The way both teams are at the moment. The Broncos, I would say, are the healthier team, even though, yes, you're missing your top corner, which I didn't realize. That is not good. But I do think, Bo Nix, like I said, is further along in the process as a rookie quarterback. I mean, it's going to be a very tough environment. That place, still brings the energy. Not like it used to back in the day when Sean Payton and Drew Brees were still around in New Orleans, but that place still gets loud. But I'm pretty sure Sean Payton probably, has these guys prepared for it. So I like the Broncos to win a low-scoring game. I'm going to say final score. I'm going to say 20-16. I'm going to say final score there. I think they get the win. And defense travels. So, you get turnovers off of Spencer Rattler, give Bo Nix a short field. They could take advantage of that. But, I don't know. I think it's a low-scoring game. And, if, the Saints had Olave and Shaheed in this game, it'd definitely be different. But, Spencer Rattler, this is going to be his second career start, and I think he's going to struggle against good defense. And you know what? Bo Nix is going to struggle in this game at times, I would imagine. But I'm going to take the team with the with the better head coach in this matchup. He knows the ins and outs of the organization on the other side, so I think he's going to have his team ready to go, and I think the Broncos get the win here and improve to 4-3 on the year. So that's my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. Who do you think will win this game? Let me know in the comments. So when we come back from our first break of the show, I'm going to talk about several different things. We'll talk about Nick Chubb's return, Jerry Jones, his comments on his weekly radio spot, Brady's ownership bid, and we'll get into Andrew Thomas and being out for the rest of the season and how that impacts the Giants. So make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some loose shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to lift off.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the second part of the show, we're going to get into several different topics. Just talking about some headlines around the NFL regarding players, injuries, ownership bids, and owners lashing out at radio hosts. So we're going to get into all that. So a mix of different things here. So we're going to start off with Nick Chubb. So seems like Nick Chubb is on his way to making his debut on Sunday against the Cincinnati Bengals. And, of course, last year, that horrific knee injury in Week 2 against the Steelers. And it's been a long road back. And I saw the video, and I'm sure you guys have seen it as well. Him at a press conference, and his teammates are, pumping him up, cheering him on, just happy that, he's back. And I'm happy he's back, as well as many football fans across the nation are, because Nick Chubb is a very, very good player. And, the Browns, I think, definitely miss him. And getting him back is huge for this team. Now, does that mean that the Browns are going to go on this miracle run and make the playoffs? Probably not. But getting Nick Chubb back, and I will be seeing Nick Chubb in person in a couple of weeks when they take on the Ravens, which I'm really excited about. Actually, not even next week, really. It's come up fast. So, it's just gonna be great to see him back on the field. And no, I don't expect the Browns to go on this miracle run. But just having him back, the Browns, they can maybe find an identity with their team right now, because it's just they have failed to do that over the first 6 weeks of the season. They've dealt with injuries, bad quarterback play. It just has been it's been bad for the Browns. But at least getting Nick Chubb back, at least will excite the fan base a little bit. And they could just run the offense through him, maybe. Well, I say that, but you don't want to do that right away, because he's just coming back from a horrific knee injury. You want to ease him back into it. We'll see what kind of workload he gets. But, Jerome Ford, I don't think he's going to play on Sunday. So, you got Deontay Foreman there. Nyheim Hines, who they also brought in, he's coming back from injury. It looks like he's going to be playing in this game. They're not going to give Chubb a full workload. They're going to ease him into it and then go from there. But just seeing him back on the field, it's going to be great. And I hope, from here on out, he puts together a good season. And, it was a gruesome injury. And it's not the first time he suffered a knee injury in his life. He dealt with it in college, and now at the pro level. So we'll see. I would imagine he is going to bounce back from this. Again, he's not going to be great. First game. It's against the Bengals defense that isn't great, but it's going to take some time for him to get his confidence back, to trust his body, and then. Maybe later on in the season, that's when we're going to see more of the Nick Chubb that we saw, before the injury. But just having him back, it's great for football. So, all right. So now let's get into some injury updates. So, Andrew Thomas, the left tackle of the Giants, out for the year. Out for the year, getting foot surgery. And that is a crushing blow to this Giants offensive line, which, to be honest, has not been that bad this year. It really has not been that bad. They've been able to run block, pass protect at times. The offensive line, it looks like Joe Shane finally was able to put together a good offensive line, which is something the Giants have not been able to do for years. And that's one of the things that will probably save Joe Shane's job is the offensive line. But Andrew Thomas is regarded as one of the best left tackles in the NFL, and now, he's out for the year. And who is going to be replacing him? It's going to be Evan Neal, who the Giants took with their one of their first round picks a couple years ago, and he has not panned out. They put him over at right tackle, and it really hasn't worked out. That's why they signed Jermaine Illuminor from the Raiders, and he's done a good job. Evan Neal's kind of just been a backup, but now he's going to be taking over left tackle, which I believe is his natural position. So maybe he does well, and the Giants maybe find some value in him. He does well in Thomas's absence, and then maybe you could go ahead, get some value if he has value at the end of the season, and maybe you trade him. I don't know, but yeah, it's a crushing blow for this Giants team. And I mean, again, it's not like the Giants were going to do anything this year. They've been a kind of a weird team because they'll go on the road and they'll beat a good defense in the Browns and they'll win in Seattle, but they just can't get out of their own way. They lose these games at home that they could win. There's things to like about the Giants team. Their defense has looked good. Brian Burns has really gotten it going these last couple of weeks. I like the running game. Tyrone Tracy has looked good. The running back out of Purdue. So, yeah, I mean, there's things to like about the Giants team. The problem is they can't score. They don't have a quarterback. So once they can figure that out, then the Giants can maybe be a more respectable team in the coming years. And it does make me feel better as a Giant fan knowing that you're starting to see, other than the quarterback, you're starting to see the pieces on this roster come together. And if they could just get that main piece, which is the quarterback, this team is going to be better. So, the Giants are not as lost of an organization as maybe people thought. But that's how I felt after watching Hard Knocks. I said, all right, they have a plan. They're rebuilding the offensive line. They didn't overpay for a running back in Saquon Barkley. They traded for Brian Burns. They're putting together a good team. Well, they're putting together a better team. And it seems like they've done that. The problem is, again, it's the quarterback. They have limitations with what they have at quarterback. And they got to figure that out. So, but losing your left tackle is tough. So we'll see what kind of impact that has. The Giants will be taking on the Eagles on Sunday. We'll talk about that game tomorrow. Saquon Barkley making his return to MetLife. And actually, I'll throw something else in. So Saquon Barkley says he thinks everything is water under the bridge now, and that Giant fans, forgot about the situation and they're not going to boo him. What is he talking about? You think you're going to walk into MetLife Stadium and you're going to walk out on that field and you're not going to get booed? They are going to boo you like crazy on Sunday. Now, I don't care as much. I think Saquon made the right decision. I think the Giants made the right decision to let him walk. I really don't have a problem with Saquon leaving. Yeah, it stung a little bit that he went to the Eagles, but you know what? The Eagles have a much better offensive line, and you see what he didn't do that much last week, but you see what he has done behind a better offensive line. He's been incredible. So you know what? The Eagles, they have a good offensive line, and they've been kind of sluggish so far this year, even though they have a winning record. But Saquon did the right thing. But if you think you're not going to get booed, I don't know what you're talking about. They're not going to cheer for you. If you went to another team that wasn't in the division, you would have been okay, but no, they're going to boo you like crazy. There is a lot of good games in the NFL on Sunday, and we're going to get into all of them tomorrow, but you got Super Bowl rematches, divisional matchups, two young quarterbacks in Jordan Love and C.J. Stroud going at it. There's a lot of good games on the slate. So, and then on Sunday night you got the old guard going at it, Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers with Devontae Adams. So, this is, I know people think that game's not very good. I don't know. I think because you got Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers on prime time, Devontae Adams is with Rodgers again. I don't know. I find excitement in that game as well. But yeah, so you got that. But a couple other things. So Jerry Jones, I mean, he basically threatened the jobs of the radio hosts in Dallas. Guess he wasn't really didn't really like the questions that he was being asked, and he said he could get somebody else to ask the questions. He was saying how it's not their job with what they were doing, with what they were asking, but what do you want them to ask you? What do you expect? The team is not playing well right now. They're looking for answers. And I guess you don't want to hear it, but you'll talk about your past success. Well, Cowboy fans are living in the now. Team's not very good. And I thought the Cowboys, they'd be a team. Now, I didn't have them winning the division, but I did have them making the playoffs as a wild card team and being knocked out in the first round. But they might not even do that. They can't run the football. Their defense has been really bad this year, which I'm not that surprised, but based off of how the playoff game in Green Bay ended. But I mean, this defense has been good over the last couple of years, and they got a lot of playmakers on it. I know guys are out right now, but even before that, they weren't playing well, and they got absolutely shredded by the Lions. And Dak is not playing as good as he was last year. They don't have another threat outside of CeeDee Lamb on that offense. They got issues. They got a ton of issues, and they're looking for answers. You just paid your quarterback. You just paid your wide receiver a lot of money. And this team is 3-3. And they're lucky they're 3-3. They could be even worse than that. So, I mean, really, your only convincing win was against the Browns. And look at the Browns right now. So, I don't know. Not a good look for Jerry. Cowboy fans they've had it with him at this point. So, and then the last thing, so Tom Brady, it looks like the ownership bid is going to be passed through. So he's going to be a part-time owner of the Raiders. But now that means there's going to be a ton of restrictions with him as a broadcaster. He's not going to be allowed to go to practices, meetings. He's really not going to be able to get a ton of insight on the teams that he's covering each week. So it's going to be interesting how they work around that. And honestly, I do think Brady has gotten better these last couple of weeks as a broadcaster. I mean, again, it's not like he's going to be great right off the bat. He's not going to be Tony Romo, although people have kind of had it with Romo. But, I mean, I still don't mind Romo, but I understand why people have kind of had it with him. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting how Brady kind of works around that. And it's not like, people are like, oh, well, is he just not going to do it anymore? But it's a ton of money you'd be walking away from. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting, but it officially ends his playing career because now that he's an owner, he can't come out of retirement and play. Even though I really, at this point, don't really expect him to do that. I mean, I know I made jokes about, him and Belichick joining forces again and linking up with the Giants, but yeah, no. His playing career is over. He's an owner, he's a broadcaster, he's a podcast host. He's doing a lot. But yeah, that was the other thing I wanted to bring up as well. So yeah, that's the second segment here. Before we go to break, though, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat of any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. I will acknowledge it, and it just makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net. That is GSMCpodcast.net. So, when we come back from our next break, we will talk about Caleb Williams and his performance on Sunday against the Jaguars in London. I want to get into that. Just talk about the Bears, how they're really heading in the right direction, and the Jaguars are heading in the wrong direction. So we'll get into all that when we come back from our next break. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about the Bears-Jaguars game from Sunday. We'll talk about Caleb Williams' performance and how, the Bears as a team are heading in the right direction. They've been playing pretty well these last couple weeks. I know you can you could definitely make the argument, well, look at the competition. They went up against the Panthers and the Jaguars, two of the worst teams in football. I think you still gotta, take it into account to a certain extent. The Bears are running the football better. Caleb Williams, again, is looking better because of that. You have a more balanced attack. And if you look at the NFC North as a whole, it's the best division in football right now. I know I've talked about it already, but really is looking like the best division in football. Every team is over 500. We've only seen one matchup against involving these two teams between the Vikings and the Packers, and that turned out to be a really good game, even though, it was like a tale of two halves. The Vikings dominated the first half, Packers dominated the second half. But on Sunday, we are getting, again, one of the better matchups of the weekend, Lions against the Vikings in Minnesota. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, the Bears, they have really started to get it going. You would like to see, again, it against better competition. But again, you want to, you're still going to take it into account. But these are Caleb Williams' stats from Sunday. So 4 touchdowns. He did throw a pick. Over 200 yards passing. A couple times he hit Cole Kmet. Keenan Allen had 2 touchdowns. That was one thing that they said. They wanted to get Keenan Allen going, and they got him going in this game. And this is what I talked about before the season. I love the Bears' skill position players, and I just said, you know what, this team, maybe they don't make the playoffs, but I do expect them to get better as the season goes along. And maybe, they could make the playoffs. It wouldn't surprise me right now if every team in this division made the playoffs, because the NFC is not very good. I had at least 2 teams from the division making the playoffs. I had the Lions and the Packers, but the Vikings right now are 5-0. The Bears are 4-2. Who's to say all 4 of them can't make the playoffs? Right now, looking at the current playoff picture, the Vikings have the 1 seed. The Lions and the Bears control 2 of the 3 wild card spots. And right now you have the Buccaneers and the Packers. They're tied at 4-2. So right now the Buccaneers, they're holding on to one of those wild card spots and holding off all 4 NFC North teams from making the playoffs. But yeah, and then of course in the other divisions you got the Falcons. They're at 4-2. Commanders 4-2. The Niners, they're at 3-3. They're back in first place. But yeah, so, the Bears, they're trending in the right direction. We got Terrell T in the chat. He said, should I start Williams tonight? All right, there's a couple of All right, so if you're talking about Javonte Williams, I mean, what are your other options besides Javonte Williams? I know, I was thinking Jamal Williams, but I'm like, if you're starting Jamal Williams, that means you got to be in like a 16 or 24 person league. So, but I would like to know what your other options are if if you're thinking about starting Javonte Williams. And Javonte Williams he hasn't been great. I think he's had a couple of good games for fantasy purposes this year, but he really hasn't been that good. And the Broncos, they use different running backs too, which makes it harder. I'm trying to pull up the Bears' schedule here. So the Bears, they'll be going into the bye here in Week 7. Then they take on the Commanders out of the bye, which actually got moved to a late afternoon game, which, it's as it should. It looks like it's going to be a Nance Romo game, which is, you have the number 1 and number 2 overall picks going at it. So that's a great game to look forward to. Then they actually do have a light schedule. Well, outside the Commanders, you got the Cardinals then the following week. Then you got the Patriots at home. But then, oh man, this is really going to determine the Bears' season. So from weeks 11 through 18, all right. So Terrell says quickly he's got Javonte, Mason, and the other running back for San Francisco. I would start. Well, then again, the 49ers are going up against the Chiefs. I would probably lean towards Mason. I think even though they're still going up against good defense. I think Jordan Mason can at least get a touchdown. He's been running the football well. I'd maybe lean towards starting him if he's healthy, because I know he got banged up last week. We'll talk about that at the end of the show, but I would lean towards starting Mason. And if that ends up not working out, don't blame me. So let's get back to the Bears' schedule, though. So after Week 10 against the Pats, home against the Packers, home against the Vikings, at the Lions, at the Niners, at the Vikings. So 3 straight road games. So 3 straight home games, then 3 straight road games against good teams, then home against the Lions. They play the Lions on Thanksgiving. Yeah, home against the Lions, home against the Seahawks, and then they finish up at Lambeau Field against the Packers. That is really going to determine their season. It's against the entire NFC North and 2 NFC West teams. And I know the Seahawks have been struggling recently, but you still got to respect them. We'll see where they're at by Week 17. But that is a brutal end to their schedule. So they got to take advantage. So they have taken advantage of their last 3 opponents: a banged up Rams team, the Panthers, the Jaguars. But out of the bye against the Commanders, we'll see what that game brings. I would probably take the over in that game. But yeah, excited for that. But yeah, the Bears, they're getting better and better. So I'm not expecting them to lose all those games, but it's going to be tough. I think they should beat the Cardinals and they should beat the Patriots. If they lose to the Commanders, then, once they get into that brutal stretch, they're 6-3. So, they'd be in good shape. And I'm not expecting them, to get swept by their division. Right now I like the other teams in their division better at the moment, but, they could definitely, the Lions struggle on Thanksgiving for some reason. Actually, nope, shouldn't say that. Recently. Last year, against the Packers, they were the better team and they lost. The year before that, they played against the Bills. The Bills were the better team. But, could this be the year the Lions finally win on Thanksgiving? Maybe. We'll see. But that'll be an interesting game. But yeah, no, they are looking like a much better team than early on in the season. But I want to get into the specifics of the game quickly. So they ended up defeating the Jaguars 35-16. The Jaguars, believe it or not, actually did score first. They were up 3-0, but then the Bears kind of took over the game. Caleb Williams hit Cole Kmet for a 31-yard touchdown in the second quarter. He did throw a pick. Jags didn't turn that into anything. Then he hit Cole Kmet again for a 2-yard touchdown, so it was 14-3. Jaguars fumbled. Evan Ingram fumbled in this game. That led to another touchdown. Caleb Williams connected with Keenan Allen. But then the Jags put together a touchdown drive. Trevor Lawrence hit Gabe Davis for a 21-yard touchdown, so that made it 21-10. But then the Bears immediately scored after that. And Caleb Williams found Keenan Allen for another touchdown. So that made it 28-10. Then Trevor Lawrence threw a pick, and that led to a 1-yard touchdown run by DeAndre Swift. Jags did score a touchdown. Gabe Davis another touchdown. So that made it 35-16. Bears did miss a field goal in the game, or in the fourth quarter. But yeah, that was that ended up being the final score. Trevor Lawrence went 23 of 35 for 234 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Mac Jones came in the game for one play. They barely ran the ball. Dearness Johnson actually ended up being their leading rusher with 28 yards on the ground. Travis Etienne got banged up in this game. Evan Ingram, back from injury, 10 receptions, 102 yards. He had a good game outside of the fumble. Gabe Davis, 2 touchdowns in the game. Jaguars defense had 3 sacks. Caleb Williams, I showed you his numbers before. DeAndre Swift continues to play well. You look at the last several weeks. 93 yards against the Rams, 73 yards against the Panthers and a touchdown, 91 yards against the Jaguars and a touchdown as well. And, he's also being used in the passing game as well. Cole Kmet had 2 touchdowns. Keenan Allen had 2 touchdowns. Rome Odunze had 40 yards receiving. DJ Moore only had 20. But, yeah, that's the thing. Bears defense also had 4 sacks. But that's the thing with this offense is, not everybody's going to have a good game. Players are going to take turns having good games each week. So, yeah, and it was Keenan Allen and Cole Kmet this week. But you're starting to see the Bears put it together. And I think the bye week is going to do wonders for this team. It's only going to make them better. And when they come out of the bye and take on the Commanders, and, it's going to be a tough game because that Commanders offense can put up points, but their defense is not very good. So, and the Bears do have a good defense. So, I think the Bears could win that game. And then you got 2 games that I think they should win. So you could either be, like I said, you could either be 6-4, 6-3, or 7-2. And you'd be in good shape going into that tough part of your schedule. So we'll see what happens. But let me know what you guys think about this game. Let me know what you think about Caleb Williams' performance. As for the Jags, this season continues to spiral out of control. I can't believe I gave this team 9 wins. They're not even going to get close to that this year. I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. I originally gave them 8 wins. I had them with the losing record, but they're not even going to get to 8, it looks like. And Doug Peterson, it looks like he could be fired before the season ends. And you started to see them, put something together at least. And you thought, like, okay, maybe, they could pull off a win here against the Bears, against a rookie quarterback. No, not the case. Not the case. And we have the absolute pleasure. So there are a lot of good games on Sunday. But to start us off on Sunday, we have the pleasure of watching the New England Patriots, who are 1-5, taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are also 1-5. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Well, Drake May's playing, so, a mixed bag in his debut, but, it at least adds a little bit of something to the game. But, or maybe Mac Jones comes in, revenge game for Mac Jones. But, yeah, not really looking forward to it. But, we'll see what happens. But, yeah, let me know what you guys think about this game. We're going to take our next break. When we come back, we will talk about the Falcons and their win over the Panthers. They're starting to trend in the right direction. We'll get into that game when we return from our next break. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC. to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about the Panthers and Falcons game. Falcons winning that game 38-20. So let's get into the specifics of that game. So, the Falcons, after that epic Thursday night matchup against the Buccaneers, what was this encore performance going to be? Now, the Panthers, I know Andy Dalton has kind of made, the offense look a little bit better. But, the Panthers, after that first win, against the Raiders, they have not won a game since. So, they've kind of reverted back to their losing ways. But, they did put up more points, believe it or not, than they did in that Thursday night matchup. But Kirk Cousins didn't throw for 500 yards. How many passing yards did he have in this game? He only had 225, one touchdown, no interceptions, 19-30. What the Falcons did do, however, and this is something that's encouraging for fantasy owners of a certain player, Bijan Robinson, they relied on the running game in this matchup. So they had almost 200 yards rushing, 198 rushing yards, and 3 rushing touchdowns. And believe it or not, Bijan Robinson wasn't the leading rusher. Tyler Algier was. He had 18 carries for 105 yards and a touchdown. Bijan had 15 carries for 95 yards and 2 touchdowns. Drake London continues to have a good year. 6 receptions for 74 yards and a touchdown. Kyle Pitts, 3 for 70. Darnell Mooney, 3 for 38. Ray McLeod, 3 for 30. He had a fumble in this game. A couple of interceptions off of Andy Dalton here. No sacks by the Falcons defense. And then for the Panthers, Andy Dalton went 26-38, 221 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Chuba Hubbard had 18 carries for 92 yards. Dalton had 21 yards rushing. Miles Sanders only had 1 yard on the ground. Deontay Johnson, who has been part of trade talks, so we'll see if that ends up happening. That was another receiver that could possibly be traded before the deadline. Maybe, maybe not. 78 yards receiving and a touchdown. Panthers defense, no sacks. So no sacks in this game. But, the Falcons are starting to put it together. Now, they actually, right now, are 3-0 against their division so far, which that puts them in great positioning. Right now, they are tied with the Bucs at 4-2, but that win against the Bucs, keeps them in first place for the moment. And you look at the Falcons' schedule coming up. They have the Seahawks on Sunday at home, and the Seahawks defense isn't great, hasn't been playing well. So I like the Falcons to win that game. And then they got the Buccaneers again in Tampa, home against Dallas, at New Orleans, at Denver. Then you got the bye week, and then home against the Chargers. Chargers got a good defense, so that could be tough. At the Vikings, Kirk Cousins homecoming. At the Raiders, home against the Giants. At Commanders, and then home against the Panthers. So it's a doable schedule. And, I did pick the Falcons to win the division before the year started, and I think that still is going to be the case. But, I think they're still trying to put things together offensively. But, it's definitely gotten better. These last 2 games, like I said, they won in different ways. Against the Buccaneers, it was Kirk Cousins throwing the ball a ton of times and passing for over 500 yards. This game, the Panthers are not as good as the Buccaneers, so, their game plan was a little bit different. And you relied on the running game, and, Kirk Cousins did his thing. He found Drake London for a touchdown. So, the Falcons, slowly but surely, they're putting it together. And I think they're in a much better position than they were, in the beginning of the year, where I was like, oh, my man, this offense, is it ever going to start clicking? But it has. It definitely has. I think probably the bigger concern, because once the Falcons get healthy, I know they were missing some offensive linemen. But once you get healthy on that side of the ball, and you give Kirk Cousins the protection that he needs, you're good there. The defense not being able to get after the quarterback, no sacks in this game, is something to keep an eye on. I don't think this Falcons defense is bad, but definitely would like to see them put more pressure on the quarterback. I mean, they're getting turnovers, which you like to see. Maybe they're in the market to get another pass rusher. That would probably be, I guess, something to focus more on is the defense and trying to get that going. Like I said, trying to get after the quarterback. And then, as for the Panthers, they're 1-5. They take on the Commanders this week, so I don't really like their chances there. Then at Denver, home against the Saints, not home against the Giants. It's a home game for them, but they'll be in Germany for that game. They go on the bye, week 11, and then they take on the Chiefs at home, the Buccaneers at home. They're in Philly, home against the Cowboys, home against the Cardinals, at Tampa, against the Buccaneers, and then at the Falcons. So, yeah, not a lot of wins there for the Panthers, if any. Actually, good news for them. Another running back that could be coming back soon is Jonathan Brooks, their rookie running back. He could come back and give the Panthers fans a little bit of excitement there to see him play. It's just team's not good, and you wonder, could they possibly go back to Bryce Young? Is that on the table? Probably is. I mean, we did see him in mop-up time, or in garbage time, whatever you want to call it, against the Bears because they wanted to get Andy Dalton out of there because of the offensive line not being able to protect the quarterback against the Bears. But it's like, well, why are you putting Bryce Young in that situation? It's didn't really. I forget who said this, but if they would have just not have said that, they wouldn't have gotten. Panthers wouldn't have gotten blasted for that move. But the fact that you come out and say, yeah, we just wanted to get Andy Dalton out of there against the it's like, so you want to put Bryce Young in there and see him get knocked around. But it's like that with the Patriots. The Patriots don't have a good offensive line, and they did the reverse. Well, actually, no. They didn't really do the reverse. They took out the veteran and put in the rookie against the offensive line. But, I guess it's different because, they had Bryce Young starting. They benched him. They put in Andy Dalton, and then they put him in against the Bears at the end. Whereas the Patriots, you're starting Jacoby Brissett, and now you're putting in Drake May. And Drake May's in his first year. So, I don't know. Yeah, it's, just get better offensive line. Get a better offensive line. It's easier said than done, but, Panthers got a lot of work to do. I think the Patriots, at least they're heading in the right direction. The Panthers, I don't know what direction they're heading in, but, Andy Dalton is not the future of this team. And it doesn't look like Bryce Young is either. So, if they get the top pick, if you're going to draft a quarterback again, you got to get better surrounding pieces, and they at least tried to do that to an extent, drafting a receiver. They traded for Deontay Johnson. They drafted a running back. They did sign a couple of offensive linemen in the offseason, but it's still the same thing. And I think the defense needs a lot of work too. So, they Panthers got a lot of work to do. And we'll see where they end up picking. You got a lot of teams that are at one win right now. Between the Browns, the Jaguars, the Panthers, the Patriots. It's we'll see who ends up. We'll see how the draft order ends up settling itself out by the end of the year. But yeah, there's bad teams. The Panthers are one of them. So, but Falcons, they pick up another win. Like I said, 3-0 against the NFC South, and that's big. That's huge, especially, if it's between it looks like it's going to be between them and the Buccaneers. The Saints now with all the injuries and Derek Carr getting hurt, after this hot start that they had, they look like they're falling out of it. Panthers, never really had a chance. It's going to come down to those two teams, and that's what makes that game in Tampa, not this week but next week. It's going to be huge. The Bucs got to get even, and they beat the Saints at least, and that overtime loss a couple weeks ago in Atlanta was huge. Because then the Bucs, they'd be 5-1 right now, and the Bucs, they got a really tough schedule coming up. Because they play the Ravens, they play the Chiefs, they play the Niners. They're playing these first place teams. Well, I mean, in the AFC, it's one of those things where they're playing, the first, I guess, the first place team of the North, because that's where the Ravens finished last year, and then they're playing the Chiefs. But actually, well, yeah, because then they're playing the AFC West this year. So, yeah, not easy. Going up against the Ravens and the Chiefs, and then you got the Niners because you finished in first place, one of the first place NFC teams. So, at least 2 of those 3 games are at home, but they're going to be tough games. So, and the Falcons, they got to take advantage of that with the Bucs going up against some tough teams, some tough opponents. Got to take advantage of that and keep stacking up the wins. And I think once they get to their bye week, that's really going to help this team. And yeah, I mean they're in a good position right now, a better position than the Bucs. So we'll see how it all pans out. But to get this running game going for the Falcons is encouraging. And the pass catchers like Drake London. I know Mooney had a quiet game, but he's been good so far. Kyle Pitts, at times has gotten it going, but you're looking for that consistency, and I guess it's just not going to be there. And Ray McLeod as a number 3 wide receiver, he hasn't been bad either. He makes plays for them. So I know the fumble, you don't want to see that, but yeah, I mean their receiving core is okay. I think that's something that maybe they could address that at the deadline, or if not, that's something that's a position I think of need in the offseason. I know they did trade for Rondale Moore when they did a Rondale Moore Desmond Ridder swap, and Rondale Moore got hurt unfortunately, and he's out for the year. But that's definitely something that they're going to have to address in the offseason or at the deadline. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. We are going to take our final break. When we come back, we'll talk about the game from last Thursday. We'll talk about the Niners' performance against the Seahawks and whether or not they, this is the start of something good for them with some of the tough losses that they've had so far this year. So for one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for Oh, excuse me. And for the final part of the show, we are going to get into talking about the Seahawks 49ers game from last week. Just get into that and talk about the Niners' performance and, if they're back or not. And, it was a good performance for them. But again, it almost ended kind of the same way some Niners games have ended this year, and that's, them blowing leads. We saw that against the Cardinals. Because, the 49ers, they were dominating this game. It looked like they were going to run away with it. And then the Seahawks slowly started to come back into this game. And, however, the Niners, they were able to hold them off, and they got the win. So they were up 23-3 in the third quarter. But then, like I said, the Niners slowly started to come back, or the Seahawks slowly started to come back. You had Laviska Shenault run back a kick return for a touchdown to make it 23-10. The Seahawks then scored again later on to make it 23-17. But then, the Niners, they scored a touchdown in the fourth quarter. The Seahawks scored to make it 29-24, but then the Niners scored again. And the final score was 36-24. But, so the Seahawks got the ball to start the game, and Geno Smith was moving the ball down the field. DK Metcalf had a 30-yard reception. They got into the red zone, but then Geno threw a pick trying to hit Tyler Lockett. He gets intercepted. Niners turned that into a field goal. There was no Jake Moody in this game because, he got hurt in the previous week. But, Niners kicked the field goal to make it 3-0. They scored a touchdown in the second quarter. It was one play. Brock Purdy hit Deebo Samuel for 76 yards for the touchdown. And then they got a field goal later on, a 41-yard field goal. So it was 13-0. Then it was 16-0. So, it was 16-3 at the half. And then the Niners, they opened up the half going 9 plays, 70 yards. Brock Purdy connected with George Kittle. Threaded the needle on that pass. I thought Kittle didn't catch it, but he did, and that was his first touchdown of the night, 1 of 2. So that made 23-3. And then, like I said, the Seahawks put together a nice drive. Kenneth Walker scored from 1 yard out. Actually, it was a... But you had the Shenault touchdown and you had the Kenneth Walker touchdown. So it was 23-17. Then Geno threw another pick. Niners turned that into a touchdown. That was Kittle's second touchdown to make it 29-17. Then the Seahawks put together a good drive, and Geno connected with Tyler Lockett for a 9-yard touchdown on 4th and goal. So, that made it 29-24. And then the Niners, they put together another touchdown drive. The other running back, because Jordan Mason got hurt in this game. I'm going to try, what is it? Gruendo, I think that's how you pronounce it. A 76-yard touchdown, 76-yard run, and then that led to a Kyle Juszczyk touchdown from 6 yards out. And then the Seahawks got the ball back. They turned it over on downs, and the final score was 36-24. Kittle and Juszczyk, they were celebrating with their wives who were, on the field level. They did the kind of Lambeau leap with them. So that was funny to see. And the Niners, they pick up the win. They even their record. And does this mean that they're back? Again, there's still some problems. Defensively, they're not 100%. And that does concern me because the Niners usually have a good defense. But teams are still able to kind of move the ball against this defense. And they're going to be going up against the Chiefs on Sunday. The Super Bowl rematch. So that's going to be tough. That is going to be a very tough matchup for them. It is at home, thankfully, but, still, you got the Chiefs coming off of a bye, so they're really going to have to bring their A game. I think Jordan Mason's okay. He should be able to play in this game. I know Terrell T was asking in the chat who he should start. I think if Mason does play, you're kind of in a tough spot because, if those are your running backs, Javante's playing tonight, and then the 49ers running backs are playing on Sunday, and if Mason doesn't play, then, you kind of got screwed over. But then I guess you start the other running back. And it was funny because Deebo Samuel, when he was being interviewed, after the game, he was saying how Gruendo kind of reminded him of Mostert, and I thought the same thing because he had number 31 on, and that was Raheem Mostert's number when he was with the Niners. I mean, he's still wearing 31 with the Dolphins, but yeah, so I thought that was funny. But yeah, it was a similar ending to the Thursday night game from a couple years ago when these two teams matched up against each other, because you had Jordan Mason, seal the game with a long run at the end when the Seahawks were mounting a comeback, and that's basically what happened here on this with this Thursday night game. Also, love the throwbacks in this game, the throwback uniforms, especially the Seahawks. Love those uniforms a lot. They got to continue to wear those. But really, all the throwbacks. The Oilers throwbacks, the Broncos throwbacks that they wore against the Raiders. The Giants with the Giants on the helmet. Not the ones that they wore in Week 1, the other ones. The ones that they wore, in the 80s and 90s. Those uniforms. I'm a fan of the throwback uniforms. The Jets, they wore their throwbacks. I mean, it's crazy that you call them throwbacks, and they were the uniforms from the early 2010s. Wish they would keep wearing those. But, yeah. No, I'm a big fan of the throwbacks. But, yeah, for the Niners, I mean, look, with all the concerns that they have had, they're still in first place. And the division right now is not very good. The Seahawks continue to struggle. The Cardinals, I know they won against them, but they're struggling. The Rams are all banged up. They got a mountain to climb, although they could be getting Cooper Kupp back. And maybe they have the season that they had similar to last year where, you start off slow and then you get hot towards the end of the year and, that propels you to the playoffs. But, they got to get a win this week. This is still the Niners division. And I think they will win this division. Christian McCaffrey maybe comes back in November, which would be huge. And then maybe you get some of the other guys that you're missing on defense back, like Dre Greenlaw. Again, I don't think there's any timetable for his return, but getting him back would be huge. So, yeah, and I think they were missing Charvarius Ward, their top corner. No Hufanga. I think he got hurt in this game, I believe. And last year I think he tore his ACL. So, the Niners defense is not 100%. And I think if you could get that defense right, they'll be in shape. Because, they could still run the football. It's not like with McCaffrey being out, they can't run the football at all. Jordan Mason has done a great job. And then you see Gruendo have this, again, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing his name right, but he has this 70-plus yard run at the end of the game. So the Niners, they could still run the football. And, as long as you got your pass catchers, George Kittle and Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, you're fine. And they could be getting Ricky Pearsall back soon. So he'll be making his debut at some point. Yeah, the Niners offensively are fine. It's defensively where I have my problems because they're injured. So, and they're missing and Javon Hargrave, he's out for the year. It's just the Niners have been dealing with a lot of injuries. But as long as you got most of your offense intact, you'll be okay. So, yeah, but the defense got to get healthy. That's the bottom line. So, but yeah, let me know what you guys think about this game. I would have talked about this, on Friday of last week, but again, I was not feeling well, so I thought I would touch upon it. But yeah, the Niners, they take on the Chiefs on Sunday. We will preview that game tomorrow. Again, there's some big games tomorrow. And we're going to talk about the biggest games. That'll be on Sunday. The Super Bowl rematch is one of them. Lions-Vikings is another one. Packers-Texans. I mean, there's a lot. Of course, like I said, we have the joy of Patriots-Jaguars to get us started. And then you got the two vets late at night with Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. So, it should be a good football Sunday. And obviously we'll take a look at some of the college football matchups for this weekend. There were some solid games on Saturday. So we'll take a look at those. We'll get into all that tomorrow. But yeah, it should be good. Another week down. Again, apologize at times. Again, we're still dealing with a little bit of congestion, and I'm hoping eventually it subsides. But, I've been saying that for the last 2 months. And, but I'm better than what I was, previously. So it wasn't like last week. But, hope you guys enjoyed the show today. Make sure to check out all the other shows. Give the other shows some love as well, like I always say. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment. Again, I'll try to respond as best as I can. Terrell T, I appreciate the comments in the chat if you're still here. Hopefully I gave you good fantasy advice. Starting to turn it around in some of my fantasy leagues. My dynasty leagues, we got off to rough starts, but in my main league, but we're starting to turn the corner a little bit. Because right now, 4-2 in one league, 3-3 in two. 3-3 in two other leagues, and then I'm 2-4 in my dynasty leagues. One of them I started off 0-4. Now I'm 2-4, and I'm starting to, get myself back into the conversation. But I'm like, what am I, 7th in scoring, but I'm like first in points against. So it's just I'm going up against people that are always dropping over 140 points against me. So, but now Davante Adams getting traded to the Jets. I have him. I'm really happy about that. With him and Aaron Rodgers, I think they're going to do well. I don't know how the Jets are going to do as a team, but I think Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams will put up good numbers. So, yeah. And then, and then my other dynasty league, I started off 1-0, got ravaged by injuries, got a big win last week. Getting Cooper Kupp back, hopefully, and then hopefully getting Isaiah Pacheco back soon after that. And then the team's looking healthy, and then, 6 teams make the playoffs, only 2 games back of a playoff spot. Maybe we make the playoffs in that. We'll see. And the spread pool, not going great. Not going great. Can't figure out this league this year. So, that's pretty much it. Went off on a little tangent with fantasy, but, appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. And, so as always, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the